Hi everyone, it's Sarah, your writing program coordinator and staff artist here at VSC for 6 Feet Apart, VSC's virtual programming and our talk show. Today is Thursday, and Kristen has interviewed Paolo Arao. He's at the Bemis Residency and is going to do a studio tour with Kristen. Great.
How are things?
Things are things right now.
Yeah, I know it's a
yeah,
big question.
yeah, I'm winding down my residency here at Bemis. I feel like, we've been here in this bubble, and just being on residency is like being in a bubble anyway.
Yeah.
And because this one is pretty isolated, I mean, we all have our own private live workspaces, so we're very self-contained in our
Right.
studios. Yeah, and it's gonna be interesting to go back to my tiny apartment that I live with my husband in and trying to navigate
Yeah.
space.
No.
I'm not gonna have access to my studio for I don't know how long. So that's part of the reason why I'm trying to finish up as much as I can while I'm
Yeah.
here and I
Yeah.
have this space because I don't know the next time I can get to my studio will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna have to try to set up some sort of home studio, home tabletop.
Yeah. You're gonna make little pieces like
Yeah,
this.
I know. Coming from this studio here, making big work, making
Totally.
yeah.
I'm just gonna randomly talk and ask you questions, and it might not even be linear.
Yeah.
That's okay. Okay, cool.
No, I'm happy to do this.
Yeah, thank you. But one of the things I wanted to ask you is about scale, because I feel like in different iterations of your work, that's a huge thing that changes, and how your work has developed even in the last, say, even 2 years. I would say it seems like it's changed a lot. And then going home, how that,
Yeah, well, scale is always dictated by the scale of my workspace. So, being in Brooklyn, having a tiny studio, the work, can only be so big. Also, I tend to make work that can fit in the back of my car. It's a Subaru Forester.
class.
Yeah, classic automobile. So, namely, the space that I work in, or the size of the space that I work in, dictates the size of my work. And
Right.
so, being here at Bemis, I have been able to scale up really large, just because I have the space to do so. In my this studio here is literally 10 times the size of my studio in Brooklyn. So I really have the space to really see things and step away and move back and not, there's like this distance that I'm limited to
Yeah.
working on a smaller scale. I also think about scale within work too. So if I work on a small scale, I try to think of ways to make it seem big and small at the same time. And the same thing with working on a large scale. I like to try to maybe shift the perception of scale that's happening within the piece. So it's not just the physical scale, but it's also what's happening within.
That's awesome. I love how it's changing, but slightly. Like sometimes it's you can't really tell. I mean,
Yeah, no, I think that the first time my scale shifted was when I went to the Vermont Studio Center back in 2018. I had that really beautiful studio, and I was able to I did this really large piece, or large for me, which was this triangular pennant that I did.
oh yeah.
That kind of happened by accident because I had intended to make these sewn fabric paintings for a show, and the paintings weren't working. So I tore them off the stretcher bars. I cut them up, started pinning them to the wall, and I re-sewed them into these triangular pennants. And I started putting them up on the wall, and it was like 4 rows high, and I was like, wait, I can go even higher than this. So I just kept on adding
That's
row
awesome.
to row to row. And it just, I think that was sort of like the beginning of expanding the scale for me.
Is that piece that you're talking about, or that way of working, is that similar to the work that's up at the Albany Airport right now?
Yeah, it's exactly. So I have a couple pieces up at the Albany Airport.
I
Those
saw
are
them.
awesome.
I'm one of like 5 people who saw them.
Awesome. Who knows what's going to happen now?
Yeah. That's great, though. I really like that work.
Thank you.
But I think I'm more interested in how you talk about, or how you maybe don't talk about, the queerness in your work.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in that just on a personal level, because I don't know if I succeed that or struggle that with that in my own work. So,
Right.
but I'm interested in talking about that.
I think I've lived in New York for 20 years now, and I'd say the first 10 years of my art career in New York, I made photorealistic drawings, and a lot of them were homoerotic in content. And for me, I was beginning to feel pigeonholed in the way I was making these drawings, and I wanted to find a way to still deal with the queer content, but without the use of the body, and also do it in an abstract way. And so the work that I've been doing, this is a really difficult question because it's like there's like so much that has happened in throughout coming from representation. I started making paintings that were abstract, geometric, but I was making paintings in pairs, and so I think that was sort of the way for me to start thinking about the queer content. And it was making these paintings that appeared to be similar or identical, and I lovingly called them my same-sex paintings. And so I mean, to me, that was being explicit in that content, even though it was abstract. And the move from working with painting into textiles, sort of that for me is a way to allude to the body through the narrative history of fabric, and alluding to the body. So and it's still something that I'm trying to navigate and trying to, because I mean, there's still more that I want to explore with it. And the way that I talk about this work is that I'm queering abstraction, or I'm queering modernist painting, and geometric abstraction. It's through the use of materials and labor, and the process. So, but it's still open enough that people can see it on a formal level. I think for me, I just wanted to keep the reading as open as possible, that there was not one way to read the work, that there were multiple avenues for people to access the work, to keep it fluid and open in that way.
You know, the difference between, say, making political work or making work politically.
Right.
And so when you take it in another context where you say making queer work or making work queerly, you know, and that's, I guess, where I'm trying to figure that out. Like, the queerness is in the work. Yeah. How do you view that? I guess that's the question. Like,
yeah. I mean, that's something. It's harder to, I don't know. It's harder to talk about it, to explain it, because it is, because I work in an abstract way, because I can't, I mean, that's sort of the nature of abstraction, is that it's not defined in one specific way, right? It's open-ended for multiple readings. You know, thinking about queerness and the work, it's like not every single thing that I do has something to do, like, it's not like I'm always making queer work, or I'm always like, it depends on whatever the work is and whatever it calls for. Like, you know, there are different aspects that I come to making work from. And, you know, like most recently I just did a show that opened in Denver. It's at David B. Smith Gallery in Denver, and the show is up, but it's online right now. But so the work that I made in that exhibition, I drew heavily from my Filipino background. So and so it's all abstract, it's all geometric, but I was using motifs and patterns found in ethnic Filipino textiles. I draw from my identity as a Filipino American, from my lived experiences as being a queer person in the US. There's multiple things. And so, you know, that's something that I'm trying to figure out in the work. And it's not like I'm trying to put all of that into each piece. It's just, you know, that for the show in Denver, it's sort of more exploring the Filipino heritage side. And geometric abstraction has this long history, right? And it's like, how do I contribute to that? How do I make it different? How do I bring something of myself into it? And so for me, researching and finding these patterns and these that originate from the Philippines, there's a closer connection to that. And that for me, in a way, humanizes the geometry that I'm using, that it's not just, these rigid shapes and forms, that they are coming from somewhere. But it's so weird because I made all that work for Denver. It's up now, and I'm still only beginning to process it all. Like, I haven't really fully formed what it is. I just knew that using these patterns and motifs, that was like the starting point. And that's something, when I make work, I like to be in that place of not knowing. And it's in the making that then I discover what it is. And then it's also in the distance of being apart from it and thinking about it that I fully realize what it is. And so I think I'm not to that point yet, just because the work is still fresh and it's still new. And so
that makes sense. Is there a particular way or desire or connection to how you source your fabrics or your materials or textiles?
I generally go to the garment district in New York, and I like Mood. I'll go there and fabric. I also get fabric or old clothing given to me
Nice.
from friends and family, so I use that. Anytime I travel anywhere, I always try to seek out a fabric store just to have a history or a memory of that place, and then that gets stitched into the work too. So not everyone's going to know that this specific fabric is from this place or that place or this meant something, but I think it imbues the piece with an overall meaning and power. And I don't necessarily want it to be 100% evident what the work is. Like, I still want it to be a little bit mysterious. And
I think it's pretty mysterious. I think it's getting away with mystery. Yeah. I don't want to ask you what your favorite residency is, because I know it's Vermont Studio Center. But for me, getting to a new place, it doesn't take me a while to set up my space, but it takes me a while to feel like me in my space. But how does that affect your work, or is that part of your work now because you do residency so much?
Yeah, no, I think for the past 2 years, I've been on this residency tour since 2018. And so it's nice to have a chunk of time to just really devote all your energy into your work. And so most of the residencies that I've done have been 4 weeks, actually all of them so far. And then Bemis is 12 weeks. So here, I think the other thing too is because you're limited with the amount of time that you have, that you've set a deadline for yourself.
Yeah.
I am someone who works really well under pressure and on a deadline, and I really need that. And so, going into these residencies, I kind of sort of have a plan of what I want to do, but then I also realize that being there, plans constantly change. Like responding to the site, responding to the, whatever is around, that definitely has a factor on how I make the work. The past couple of times that I've been to Vermont, I've been fortunate enough to have shows sort of lined up, sort of in the right after. And so I came to Vermont with this goal of making work for shows. And so that was a great thing. And here at Bemis, it took a little bit longer to get situated, just because, 3 months is a long time. I think for the first month, not just me, but I think everyone was just nesting. And then it wasn't until the second month that I really cranked stuff out. And that's when I made 9 paintings for the show in Denver. Since the Denver show, I've just been trying to crank out these larger pieces that I'm working on for an installation up on the 5th floor. And then there's this column here that I'm wrapped in fabric. So when am I going to have a column like this? I don't know. So
right.
I just do that. I come from a military family, so I'm used to traveling everywhere and only being in a certain place at for a certain amount of time. So I think it's been ingrained in me to sort of adapt to a place and then just make the most of it, and then know that I'm going to leave. You come in, you do your thing, you meet people, you make friends, and you make work, and then you carry on, and then you've expanded that network. And Yeah, I think that's another great thing about doing residencies, and especially Vermont Studio Center too, is just the number of residents that you get to meet and are connected to. And I was there in January of 2018, and then I went back January of 2019, and yeah, I feel really connected to everyone from those
Yeah.
past two residencies. It's just there's just something about being in an environment like that where you are intensely focused on your work, but then you're also intensely around other people.
Yeah.
And so that creates, it's this pressure cooker, and it creates, I mean, it really forges bonds, I think, like that you wouldn't expect, like really strong bonds.
Yeah, totally. That's what I love about the place. I mean, I'm here, but I'm not here. It's down the street. But
Yeah,
um,
what's right there right now without
weird.
there?
This whole thing that I've become a part of for the last 2 years has been, I'm with and around so many people all the time.
Right.
So, but I am very grateful for the connections, like you were saying, that I've made, because Daniel and Sarah and I have been Zooming with so many different artists and writers that we've met, that
Yeah.
it's been actually a really cool way to go back and connect to some of those people like
Yeah.
you. It's,
Right.
you have 2 shows up right now that are online, or hopefully will be
Yeah.
online, so
Right.
can you show us your studio at
Oh yeah. All
I'm
right.
dying to see it.
Let me see.
Let
All
us
right.
see
So
it.
I'm gonna take you from the front door.
Okay.
Here we go. Walking in to the studio. All right. So this is what I like to call my gallery space. So I'm working on these large scale pieces, the two on the wall and this one on the floor. These are inspired by these sails from the southern Philippines that are on these outrigger boats. And so they're super colorful sails, and I thought that I would try to make them, and I'm going to install them on the fifth. There's a fifth floor installation space, and it's just like this cavernous space. So I'm going to install them there. They're not meant to be hung on the wall. They're going to be hanging on the poles. So that's a work in progress. I also am wrapping up this column in fabric right here.
Yeah.
So I was kind of thinking about, doing something in multiples. Like I wanted to get beyond working on a painting stretched on a stretcher bar hanging on the wall. So I wanted to actually work in space with that. I have all these columns in the studio, and I had thought that I would wrap all of them. Like I wanted to do that, but I don't have the time to do so. So I'm just trying to finish up this one column just to have it and see what that is.
Yeah.
So, all right. And then we walk into sort of where this is my factory where I sew, and then there's the slop sink and some of the patterns that I've been looking at and inspiration. So yeah, in this middle area is sort of where my table is, where I sew. And then this big quilt is something that and it's made from scraps of all of my sewn paintings. So all the scraps you can see are here. I organize it on my table. So it's all the cutoffs from all of the work that I do, and I make these 8x8 blocks out of them. And so these are sort of they're like tests, they're studies, and then sometimes when I start paintings, I'll just sew these blocks together just to get a feel for a color palette, and then that's how they begin.
Gotcha.
But this whole project sort of started out of anxiety. I when I would get stuck on painting in the studio or on an artwork, I would just start sewing these blocks, these 8x8 blocks from all the scraps that were lying on the floor. And I was calling them my anxiety blocks because it was, I would be stuck on a painting and I just needed to do something. I needed to move my hands, work on something. And so I just accumulated like a stack of these anxiety blocks, and I was like, what the hell am I going to do with this? And so then I decided, I'm going to make a quilt, and because I love the idea of something sort of being born out of anxiety being something of comfort in the end. And so it made sense to make a quilt. I just love that, like of being comforted and consoled by your anxiety, and like taking that and using it as a sense of warmth and strength. And so then I started making this quilt for my bed, and then I thought, man, this whole world needs warmth and comfort and security. And this was even before this whole pandemic thing, and now it's like even more like relevant to me. And so so I think this is, eventually I want this to be the size of a football field.
Nice.
This is what I have right now. So I've got about the 2 or 3 yard line, and I've got a long way to go.
That's amazing.
But I also see this. It's just going to be a forever work in progress. I'm just going to continually add to this for the rest of my life.
You'll always have anxiety.
I'll always have anxiety, especially now. But it did start out as being anxiety. Now when I make these, it's very meditative, because it just like, I guess it's just focus. It's letting go, and I've turned that anxiety into meditation, even though it looks like it's chaotic behind me.
It's amazing, though.
It's organized chaos.
I love hearing about it. I didn't realize all that behind it. That's amazing.
But
yeah,
it began in 2018.
I love it. Thanks for taking us for a tour. That was brilliant.
Thank you for inviting me. This has been awesome.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. It was so great to talk to you.
It made my heart happy. Thank you.
Yay!
That was fabulous. Up next is a life lesson from Harlan.
Hi, welcome to another life lesson. We had previously bent nails that we straightened. Now we're going to hammer them into wood. You just want to make sure you don't hit your fingers. You put the tip down first. You tap it in lightly, right? Now, what you want to do is gently move the wrist. Never take your eye off what you're doing, because that's how you miss. Plenty of opportunities to practice, because we just showed you how to straighten nails that you already bent.
Thanks, Harlan.
Check them out. Here we go.
Wow, he's so good. This is a really special treat, guys. My friend, coworker, and roommate, your visual arts program coordinator and staff artist, Daniel Zies, is in the field right now.
Oh! Pizza!
Thanks everyone for joining us this week on 6 Feet Apart. We love having you. We love having you here. We wish you were actually here, but this is when I don't know what I'm saying right now. Stay tuned for our great programming coming up next week. We have a lot of great content, and we're really excited to share this weird world with you. So thanks for being here. Bye, everyone.